Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm starting right into, instead of going through everything I was going to use, I'm starting right into the project. As you can see for today's layout, I have started with a cut file. This cut file came from Paige Evans, and it was one of her like 30 or days of cut files, or 24, I think it was 24 days of cut files. I think that's what it was for summer. And this is actually only half of the cut file. I did not use the bottom part. The whole thing reads, "The mountains are calling and I must go." I took off the "I must go" part and just used the top. So along with the cut file, I am also using one of the awesome pages from that July Hip Kit Club kit. I really loved that Western theme, and I have so many pictures to scrap from the couple of trips that I went on, and both of them involved mountains and hills. And so I've had this cut file since July, and I've kind of been saving it for the perfect pictures. And so I think that I finally got those. So the paper that you see me using in front of you came from that kit. And as you can see, it's kind of like an abstract looking like sunset with all these different shades of browns and orange and pink. And I thought that would be really perfect for the mountain pictures that I had from when I was in Las Vegas. So I'm only going to show you part of this here. I'm just starting to cut out kind of the rays of the sun there. And I did do all of them bit by bit like this. I traced them all out, and then I drew them all out. And then I cut them all out. I really wanted just single colors for each little area in the cut file. And so I had to do it this way. I couldn't just lay the cut file over it and cut it out, because then I would have like two colors in one little ray. And I just didn't want that. I wanted it to go kind of more like the rainbow effect than just to have them kind of mixed and matched. So each one of these rays I did cut out, and then as you can see the whole cut file, the negative part of the cut file there on my mat. It was just easier for me to just leave everything on the mat and then kind of replace each one of them as I cut them out, so that I would remember where they went. So you can see me kind of replacing the white with the colored, and then I'm only going to do these few that I had traced out here, and then I will skip ahead to having the whole rainbow there. This page took me quite a while, because there was quite a bit of fussy cutting out of all of the little pieces of the cut file. And that is going to be the main portion of the page here, because, look at how pretty it is. There we go, with almost the whole rainbow there. And it's kind of a different rainbow. It's very, very subtle. It obviously does not have all the colors of the rainbow, but it's just all of these like oranges and pinks and yellows and a little bit of brown in there. And it just, I don't know, it just kind of gave me that vibe of the mountains, because when we were in Las Vegas, sometimes the mountains kind of look like that browny color, and sometimes they look like this grayish color depending on how the light is hitting the mountains. And so in this layout, I actually give you a bit of both. This sheet of paper that I have right here, this also came from the July Hip Kit, and I thought that would be really perfect for the mountain portion of the cut file. So I played around with it just a little bit. I wanted a little bit of like white on the top of some of them, so it would kind of look like snow-capped, even though when I was in Vegas, it was July, so there's definitely no snow on the top of the mountains in July. But I just kind of wanted that look. And I remember one day we were driving with my son, and I remarked on the mountains because the way that the sun was hitting it, it almost looked like ghosted and like gray and hazy. They were really pretty. And this is what that paper reminded me of. So I decided to use this paper for the mountains in the background. Just, it kind of just looked just like what those mountains had looked like that day when the sun was hitting them just right. So that is basically how that is going to fit behind the cut file. In a second, I'm going to cut out a few more spots there behind the A and behind the letters that I don't need. There we go. they're all completed now. And this kind of just gives you an idea of what this will look like once I get it completed. So this is basically the majority of what I did the whole time is, excuse me, I cut out so many pieces for that cut file. And then for the word mountains, I decided that I wanted to paint those in more of the greens and browns that the mountains will look like at other times. So I wanted both ways that the mountains looked to me during this trip kind of represented in this page. So from my shimmers collection, I picked out a creamies called Green Acres, and that has more of like a brownish green tint to it, almost like a, I can't think of the color right now in my mind, but it's got a lot of brown hue to it. And then the second color I picked was an Inklings called Emerald City. And that's more of that deep, deep green. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of randomly paint each color on each of the letters. And it's going to kind of give me this a little bit of camouflagey, molted looking green brown. And up close, you can really see like there's parts that have a little more brown and there's parts that have a little more green, and it came out exactly how I wanted it to. I'm not going to force you to watch the whole thing because I did go over these a couple of times and dried them in between with my heat gun just to get the right color that I wanted. But that's kind of how I did it. You can see me kind of alternating between the paint brushes here, some going into that Green Acres and some going into that emerald green, and just kind of dabbing here and there on it just to get that mix of color. So it looks super, super dark on the screen, but it does dry up quite a bit lighter and with more variation in the color. Okay, so that background piece also comes from that July hip kit. And I really liked it because the background pattern is kind of this grayish blue. In some lights, it looks like a light gray, and some lights, it looks more like a blue tint. I liked that because I thought that could represent the sky, because you'll see my pictures in a little bit. The sky was very, very blue when we were hiking in the mountains. Well, I say hiking, but you know, that has quotation marks around it because it was like a 15-minute walk because we got too tired and turned back around and decided we don't want to do this today. But the sky is very, very blue. So I wanted a little bit of blue, even if it was kind of that grayish blue represented. So here's kind of my idea, what I thought about doing. If you remember that original paper that I cut basically the sun rays out of, on the bottom it had kind of this hilly portion. You can see it right there on the bottom of the sheet right there. And so my idea was to cut this apart, scuff up the edges a bit so that we have a little bit more texture and dimension on the papers. And then I want to stick that down on the bottom. So basically, I'm using most of that first page. But there's going to be, you know, little bits of this background paper showing through. That's kind of like the skies. And I really liked that idea with it. So there we go. I've cut off the first piece and just scuffed up the edges a bit. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with each one of the pieces. You guys can see that there's a sun, like a setting sun, in the background. I don't end up using the sun portion of that paper. I just liked it better when I took that sun off from there. It had more of the vibe that I was looking for. And I guess in my ramblings here, I forgot to talk about the paper that I put behind the banner that says "Our Calling." That was just the back of one of the sheets of paper that I had left over. So I didn't have to cut into another piece for that. That one was already a scrap. So this is basically the layout that I've got here. I'm going ahead and gluing down that cut file because I have it where I want it. It almost is like the sun up there, like you see, you know, with all the little pieces up there in the background. And I just liked the way that this layout turned out. I really enjoyed the placement of the cut file, and then once I get my pictures on, it turned out perfectly the way I kind of was envisioning it in my mind. For this part, I just was adding a little dimension to that banner. I just stuck a couple of pieces of foam strips underneath each edge, just so that they would pop up a bit. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place my letters in here. And I had forgotten about that little circular piece for the center of the O. In the end, I didn't even need it, and you'll see why when I come to the end. Some other last minute decision I made on the layout makes that kind of unneeded, but whatever. I went ahead and added it anyway. So here I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put all of the pieces in with all of the strips for the sunset area or sunbeams or whatever you want to call them. I decided to scuff up all of those little pieces of paper. So of course I'm not going to make you watch all of that, as that would be tedious and boring. But I did want you to see kind of the process of what I was doing. And, you know, like I said, this was kind of a pretty nitpicky page. There was a lot of paper piecing, a lot of cutting things out, but I think it was worth it in the end because I think it looked really cool. There's the finished product. I've got all of the sun portions of the page done and all of the letters put in, and I really like how that looks. It represents everything about being in that Las Vegas area and looking at the surrounding mountains and the color of the land there. And so I thought this paper was perfect for that. There are my two photos right there. Like I said, my husband and I and my son and his wife were going on a little hike at Mount Charleston just outside of Las Vegas. And we took a group picture, and then I took a picture of my son and his wife starting up the trail, and you've got the mountains in the background. So that is, those are my pictures. For my embellishments, I actually did not use the embellishments that come with the hip kit, which I had planned on doing, but they just didn't fit the vibe of what I was going for in this layout. So instead I pulled out my 49 in Market Spectrum Sherbet ephemera pack, and excuse me, as you guys saw, I pulled like one of the papers out of the back and just kind of used that as kind of an anchor for my photos, and I started putting my photos on there. I also used the acetate leaves from that Spectrum Sherbet collection, and also a couple of the laser cut die cuts out of there as well. So I started off just putting the one side on so that I could kind of get an idea of how I wanted the bunches of leaves and things to kind of stick out. And then I'm just going to kind of mirror that on the other side. I do have a tag that I'm going to put in there, so I'm going ahead and I'm doing that right now. I had thought about putting some twine on that tag, but I ultimately decided against doing that because it's mostly hidden behind the foliage. You'll see that in just a second. That ticket up there I also got from that ephemera pack. I love those tickets, and plus they were like the perfect color for this paper. You wouldn't have thought that, because when you look at the Spectrum Sherbet collection, it seems to be very bright and colorful and cheery, and this paper was a lot more subdued, and I wouldn't necessarily say cheery. I would just say, it's kind of a calming color palette. And so I was kind of surprised how well they worked together. And I just think I really love how it turned out. Here I am, I'm just kind of simply sticking these acetate leaves again behind the second photo, and I'm just filling in with that foliage and just kind of giving a natural nature type look to this page, because we were up in the mountains, we were exploring nature, we were hiking, we were enjoying the beautiful scenery. That's the whole point of being up there and doing this hike. And so I really like how these leaves and different foliage pieces kind of just represent that about being in that area of our country. And I don't know, I'm a little bit fascinated with the mountains because, I live in a much flatter area. I live in the Houston area, and so it's flat. We do have the ocean, which is awesome, and I love the ocean. but the mountains kind of fascinate me because it's not something that I see all the time. So I'm just going ahead here, adding a few more little tidbits. I added another ticket there at the bottom of the paper on the picture on the right. And then here I'm going to add this banner. It says Pure Joy, which is really what we were feeling being there with our son and daughter-in-law, and getting to just enjoy this nature together and spending some invaluable family time with one another. So it was just a really, really nice time. And, you know, joy was really what we were feeling. So I felt like this was the most perfect banner to put down there. And I did pop it up a little bit on foam on one end because it's sitting on top of the pictures, which there's quite a bit underneath the pictures. So they're kind of up off the page. And there's a good amount of dimension going on that bottom section of the page and the top, honestly. This was just a really, really fun page with a lot of texture and a lot of glimmer because of the shimmers and the acetate leaves. You know, they have like that shiny effect to them. So there's just a lot going on, a lot to draw the eye to the page and the pictures at the bottom of the page. So I'm just kind of finishing up here, getting things kind of put where they need to be. I have a few flair from Scrap and Happy Studio. I pulled them from 2 different sets of hiking sets that I had gotten just recently after my trip. The one down on the very left-hand side in that cluster says trail. The other one on the right-hand side says just hike. And there I was telling you about the little secret reason why I didn't need the extra little circle is I put one flair that just has some beautiful like watercolor mountains and trees on the center of the O for mountains. And I really like how that looked. And I loved adding that little detail. So for the end bit here, I tried to color match the best I could, some shimmers paints to do some splatters. The paints that I used, I started with my Clementine, which is a Creamies. I then went to Gosh Garnet, which is an Inklings. Then Dandelion, which is a Creamies. An Inklings in Sunkissed, an Inklings in Pinkaboo, and then an Inklings in Coral Reef. And I did them all, tried to match them up with the colors on the little rainbow section up there on the top. And it just gave a little bit of shimmer and sparkle, which, you know, we can never have too much of. To finish everything off, I went ahead and watered down a bit of white acrylic paint, and I am going to do some splatters on the foliage and things on the bottom just to kind of give it a little bit of interest. I did do a little bit of white paint also over where it says mountains, but I think I might skip that part on the video. I'm not sure if you'll see that or not. But I just kind of wanted, I don't know, the little splatter effect everywhere all over the paper. Yeah, there I go. I did it on the top too, do a little bit with the white. You can't see it that well up on the top, but you can see it really well on the foliage on the bottom. So I really like how that turned out with everything. And that, my friends, is the whole layout. Look at the beautiful shimmer and shine from those shimmers. Also on the word mountains, look at those adorable flair. I just love everything about it. I think it just turned out really pretty. I love the papers, love the embellishments, of course, love the pictures. And I hope y'all enjoyed, and thanks for being with me today. Come back anytime, hit subscribe so that you get notification of new videos, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye for now.